Ladies and gentlemen, here at the beautiful Powerlifting Studios, and today we got a special podcast because we are here with one of Tucson's very own, an incredible athlete. We are here going to be doing a deep dive into the life of finding out who is 90's Masters champion, CJ Peirce. And of course, I'm always on here and always am privileged to be around the American treasure, Paul Leonard. So here we are, boys. We are ready to go. And I think we got one hell of a show coming out today. It's going to be fun.
Yes, sir, Sean.
Well spoken, guys.
We're very polite. We're at all corners of Tucson.
So well, Sean. How do we follow up to that, Sean, when you introduce us so well with that voice, the American treasure, Paul, CJ Peirce, Masters champion? How do we follow that up? That's the question. I think Paul and I just recognize your greatness, so we just kind of shut ourselves up and let you do it for us.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. That's what it is right there. So anyhow, real quick, not to kind of beat a dead horse, but everybody knows that the reason why we started this podcast is to unite kind of like the strength sports here in Arizona. And it doesn't matter whether you're powerlifting, strongman, bodybuilding, MMA, arm wrestler. We're trying to create an environment to where we can showcase these athletes, because I've been sitting around here for about 4 years now and watching all of these gyms have all these amazing people go up there and breaking records and having amazing debuts. And it's like nobody's showcasing this, which is ridiculous, because it's just proven that here in Arizona, we are a strength sports state. Do you guys agree with me on that or not?
Oh, yeah, big time. Like, you look at the guys who are starting to come up from Arizona. We got some real strong dudes down here in Tucson. Phoenix, we got some monsters up there. So Arizona's definitely on the up and up in terms of strength sports, especially strongman. Last year, I think we hosted the 11th most shows in the United States, which is pretty good. Like, that's significant, especially considering that we're not a huge population state. It's definitely on the rise, that's for sure.
Paul, how would you say that with you being here in being here in Arizona? You've been over to the East Coast as well as the West Coast.
Yeah, Sean, just in my time, I moved here to Arizona in 2008, and to be honest, there weren't even any really good strength athletic gyms in Tucson. Now we have Be Strong Powerhouse, which has 2 locations. We have Evolve, which CJ, I know CJ, kind of everybody in town goes to all the gyms, if you will, at one time or another. We also have Tucson Strength. So, I mean, I would say there's 10 good locations in Tucson at which you could get strong. That's not to include all our allies up in Phoenix, such as Chris Knight at American Raw. And then I haven't had the pleasure, like you guys have been up to Flagstaff, where I know CJ did a considerable amount of training in the last year with the Sloths up there. So, in their facility. So it's never been better, and it continues. Now what you see, if you build it, they'll come. They've built these amazing gyms, facilities, 24-hour, 365 access, and they stocked it with great equipment. Now we have relationships being built like we're showing right here today, and the performances speak for themselves.
Oh, hands down. And like I said, we love showcasing the kind of champions. And last night, obviously, Melissa Tyke, Bichon Power Cone, or with Rafe Tyke, she won the Texas Pro and has her spot at the Olympia this year. So, I mean, look, you got CJ won it 2 weeks ago, and you got her getting on stage and just sweeping it. And I saw the scorecard, and it was a 3, which means she got a 1 in every single category, which is almost impossible to do.
Yeah, that's near impossible to do. Like, I'm not super well versed in bodybuilding. I just know that's very rare.
Right. So, like I said, we had the podcast last night on that. We streamed it, and obviously go up to them, check them out, because Arizona, like I've been saying for years, is a powerhouse when it comes to strength sports. So, moving on to another Tucsonian champion, we have CJ Peirce. And I've had the privilege of getting to know him since I first signed up. I think it was 2018 is when you guys were doing the first Battle of the Beast, actually, I think at the OG gym over there. You guys were just out in the parking lot. You, Hubert, and I think 3 other people.
I think so. I think that's what it was. Yeah, it was at the OG location. It was a parking lot show. I think there was 15 athletes that day. Right? Am I remembering it correctly? I think so.
Yeah. And that was my second day. I signed up Friday night, saw somebody squat 605 pounds. Like, okay, this is fantastic. Second day camp there, checked it out, and was like, this is definitely the place to be. Arizona is definitely the Mecca where I wanted to move to. And I was happy I made that choice. And for you, so that was the first time I saw you. Now, thing that I want to ask you is like, what kind of got you into here? Because kind of going down your Facebook, like I've been creeping on you a little bit, I see like these older photos, and it looks like you've been doing strongman since were you kind of like 16 or dabbling into it, or what's kind of been going on in your process?
So, I started getting into weightlifting when I was 10 years old.
Okay.
So it's been a while. I'm 28 now. I've been lifting weights for, 18 years. But when I was 10, like I started kind of paying attention to strongman, started paying attention to powerlifting, weightlifting, all those different things. My parents, my mom and my dad, neither of them lifted weights. Neither of them were athletes, but they were always like super supportive. So I told them I really wanted a bench press. I wanted a bar. I wanted 200 pounds of weight. So they took me to a garage sale. We found one of those old school bench presses. We found, the standard barbell that's an inch in diameter, the concrete weights, and we bought those and we moved upstairs to my bedroom because my parents didn't want it in the garage. So we put the bench press in my bedroom. That's kind of why I started. I started, paying attention to different weight, lifting strategies. Of course, when I first started, I was benching every day because I was, a 10-year-old and had no idea what I was doing. So I was benching every day. I would not squat because I couldn't figure out how to squat using a bench press. But so I started doing that, and then once I transitioned to high school, they of course had more organized lifting programs. I had football coaches who kind of got me into Olympic weightlifting. So played a lot of did a lot of lifting in high school. The only lifts that we really pushed in high school were front squat and power cleans. That was pretty much it, and then push presses. Those were our big three movements in high school for football. So I got super into it. Then I bulked up to 255. So I was a real big boy. But I got super into it.
255. I didn't catch up. 255.
I was a meatball. I was a meatball.
You've got to post those pictures in the Discord or something like that, man. I got to see this.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, I'll totally send to you. But yeah, I was playing center and I was playing D end at the time. So I bulked up to 255.
Nice.
And I look back on it, I was nowhere near as strong as I am now, but like at that weight, I did some decent things. Like I power cleaned 365. So I had like some decent numbers as a young man. And then once I graduated, I kind of decided, okay, you'll have to be 255. And maybe walking upstairs is nice. You can walk upstairs without breathing heavy. That might be cool. So I actually cut down to 165. I did that.
How long was that transition?
Wow.
5 months.
What?
Yeah, it took about 5 months to cut down from 255 to 165. I didn't do it necessarily the healthiest way. Like I said, I just had, my head was like, all right, dude, as soon as you cut down, you can start bulking back up again. So just do what you have to do, get down there. I was probably eating like 1,600 calories a day, which isn't good. It's not good. It was a really dumb way to do it. But I was also kind of training for triathlons because I was starting to get interested in that. So I was biking probably 10, 15 miles a day. I was jogging about 4 miles, and then swimming pretty frequently. Now, was I good at any of it? No. Did I do it? Yes. So I cut down, and then that's when I started doing powerlifting. So I started doing powerlifting after that, and I started bulking up. Bulked up back up to like 190 and competed in the 181s for a while. Once again, I had no clue what I was doing. I just kind of watched some YouTube videos. I signed up for a powerlifting show with about 2 weeks' notice. I researched what cues there were. I just kind of jumped in, and I didn't zero anything. I opened super light. I think my first powerlifting meet, I told I want to say it was like a 400 squat, a 250 bench, and like a 550 deadlift, I want to say. So I didn't knock anything out of the park. But I also didn't zero. And that's where I met Jeff Cole, who might be one of the strongest dudes no one knows about. He's been, powerlifting since he was about 20 years old too. I met him and we started training together in a storage unit in Tucson. So we started training together in this powerlifting storage unit in Tucson. It was ran by Gary Pantillo back in the day. It was called Big Unit Barbell. We trained there. I got really into powerlifting for a while. My bench didn't really go up at all. Never been a good bencher. But my squat went up to like mid fives. My deadlift I was sumo deadlifting, upper sixes. So I definitely got stronger. I just remember Jeff, though, most of the things that I put into my training is from Jeff. I just remember, walking in at 7 a.m., him having his cup of coffee, He's like 60 years old and he's squatting 600 pounds. He's got those old Ace bandage wraps that he's wrapping around his knees.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just, and he told me, he'd tell me, 7 a.m. sharp. So I go meet him at 7 a.m. sharp. We do like 5 sets of 20 on squats. And then his goal was always to gas me out. That was always his goal. He wouldn't say it, but I knew it because we would do like a set of 20 at 3:15. And then Jeff would start the clock. We'd have like 2 minutes. But then Jeff would go 30 seconds early. So we really had a minute 30 because Jeff was going 30 seconds early every single time. So he really taught me how to train intensive. He was just just a super intense, very into it kind of guy, and he was always super supportive of everything I did. He'd go to my powerlifting shows. Once I transitioned to strongman, he never did strongman, but he was always super interested in what I was doing. So he was probably, my biggest inspiration when I started into this was to be like Jeff, be intense while also being a good positive role model for others in the strength community.
So basically you're saying is that you kind of found like your person out of just by random choice. Like how'd you meet Jeff Cole?
I met him at the gym. Gary was the one who invited me to train at, Big Unit Barbell in this storage unit where they didn't have AC. It was like 120 degrees in that storage unit, but it was like, for me, that was my first experience into like a powerlifting gym, right? So, you walk in, it's sweaty as hell. Jeff would usually unplug the fans because he wanted to sweat. So he'd, you try to plug him in, he'd be like, no, dude, like, we're not plugging in fans today. But yeah, so I ended up meeting him there, and he and I just kind of kicked it off. Like, I knew he was what I wanted to be in terms of like personality, in terms of intensity. That's what I wanted to be. So I made it a point to get his phone number and to train with him whenever possible.
It's kind of similar how Paul and I met, just happened to be at the gym, and pretty much from there, it's like, where do you take it? Where do you go?
I used to train with Jeff Cole, and I trained with Gary Pantillo for years. They used to come to my garage. So it kind of changed once my kids got into more advanced sports through high school, and my hours changed. But I trained with both those gentlemen for years, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I know the mindset, because Tucson's a kind of a small place too. It's a big small town, if you will, especially for strength athletics.
Oh yeah, and that's actually really cool, Paul. We're gonna have to talk later about that because I want to hear some of your stories too. Like Jeff, he was just always super positive, and he'd always, he was always willing to help. And the way he helped was never, it was always. I was a young man when I started, right? So I had an ego, and the way he approached it was always so kind, and always coming from a place where he genuinely wanted to help you.
Yes, the stronger people are usually the most humble. And if you legitimately care, they'll invest all their time and effort in you to help you achieve your goals. That makes them happy. I'm happy to this day when someone I train with turns out to be way stronger than I am and learn from my mistakes and experience. That's kind of the goal. And I still enjoy learning from others myself.
Oh yeah. Like these past couple of weeks, Zach, my little brother Zach, lifting leopard, he's getting a lot stronger. He had 280 log.
Yes, he is.
So he's getting like a lot stronger. It brings me so much joy just because I know how far he's come. From being the little scrawny 160 log pressing barely 150 to now, to pressing 280 above his head. That's pretty awesome.
I'm gonna say something real quick about your brothers, because I didn't know this, but then somebody showed me this, so I kind of started paying attention to the post. But it's like, so you have CJ Peirce here, champion, Mr. Intensity, very well known here around the parts of Tucson and strength community. He'll set these records and all this stuff, but your balls will always get busted by like your mom and by like your brothers. It's like what's this guy got to do to win? And it's actually hilarious. Like, it's like you'll do a 315, set the record, and it'd be like, yeah, but his deadlift is only like this. It's like, oh my god.
Dude, so today I think I went up to like a 350 overhead on the axle bar today.
Right.
And Zach looks at me and goes, no, that was all right, man. That was decent. Yeah. I was like, what do I have to do? What do I have to do, Zach?
But in the lifting community, like, that's the old core, old school, like, mentality. Like, you're getting praise, obviously. We all know shit, but it's kind of like, what? That's it? Like, okay. Like, what's next? Like, what's the next feat you're going to do? Like, where are you going from here, It's
Yeah, well, Zach, what was it? Well, you know my buddy Grant. You know Grant, the large paw. Grant, when I won
of course.
nationals the first time, he picks me up in his like Buick. He's got this little Buick. He picks me up in the Phoenix airport and goes, "Yeah, so good job at your little tournament, buddy." I'm just sitting there. I'm like, Jesus Christ, man, really? Like, you just have to bust my balls about this. Like, congrats on your little tournament. I'm like, oh, it's good though. It
Paul,
keeps you well grounded. That's for sure. Keeps you well grounded.
is
Yeah,
this
what
kind
a
of like
training partner's for.
yeah. Is this similar to what you guys did with when you were training, Paul? Like just coming up and doing like your events because obviously you had records and you've been with all kinds of like big name guys back then. Is this kind of similar way where it's like, hey, great job, get out of the way, or just like
Yeah, you couldn't give an inch in the gym, and when people outside would say, well, my background's more powerlifting than strongman, but regardless, yeah, we wouldn't. People would be like, "Oh, you beat so and so in a contest. You did so well." I'm like, "Man, I'm used to coming in fourth in my garage. I had 800-pound squatters right in my garage." So yeah, no, that was the joy. I look back. That's like CJ says, like he might have won nationals, and you get off an airplane because you need to. Once you start getting good at strength athletics, you do have to hop a plane to find competition. So I can relate. But man, your friends at home keep you if they don't go with you, or they keep you totally grounded, so you realize, oh yeah, you
Oh,
still put on your shoes one lace at a time, just like me.
oh yeah. Because like at Clash, I went first, second, first, second, third over all of the
right,
events, which
right.
was like it was a really good like worst event ever if I got second in. But then the first thing I get my DMs from one of my buddies. Yeah, did you win all the events? What happened?
Right. It's like
I'm
you,
like, dude.
like you don't have to get first on all the events to win. I mean, there's world champion strongmans that like get second and everything. It's like, oh, they get the numbers and totals. But yeah,
Oh yeah.
it's that camaraderie. It's that kind of like like poking the bear as you would say. Just I don't know, man. I love that mentality. In some people don't like that mentality, but I think for the strength sports community, it is something it's part of it. If you're gonna be on top, you're gonna get a lot of flack. It's just the way it works.
I mean, you totally have to embrace it. You gotta love it.
Yeah.
It's part of the community. It's even if I go, when I go visit Joe and Troy at B Strong, I do the same thing where they bust my balls. Like I try to get at them, but like, what am I gonna say to Troy? He's such like a powerhouse. Joe's
Yeah.
so explosive. What am I gonna say to him? You know what I mean?
I always bust their balls when they do the log. I go, oh, that was great. Are you gonna do a strict press anytime? Show's like, no. Like we understand what that means. And for the viewers that are watching, it's like so a lot of techniques go into any kind of lifting. It's not just being, physically strong. You have to know the techniques, and that's what's gonna get your weights up. But a strict press where basically you get the log here and you're just grinding it out, like just all arms, upper body putting up there. As a feat of strength, that's impressive, and that's kind of where I kind of screwed up and injured myself by doing it. That's all I knew how to do because it's too much moving parts. But a lot of guys that do the they do the what would you classify it as a not a clean and jerk? What's yeah,
split jerk?
Yeah, and I mean it works. It's great, but it's funny because to kick off to another friend of ours, Marshall Zinn, when he comes and does his universal competitions like in Ukraine or like in Dubai or someplace like that, they always say, oh, these Americans are so like crazy, they strict pressed everything because nobody does that. But it's like these meatheads, they're just like, all right, we'll get it up where you could probably say
Marshall's such an extreme example because he's
oh
like two back side by side and the dude's just layered in muscle. He is such an extreme example of like a powerhouse.
Yeah, it's a hilarious. But just want to throw it out there so people that knew kind of what it is. But like I said, like you said, we have Masters champion of the 90s, CJ Peirce. Now, talking to you before, you said you were trying to get over to 200. Now, are you still thinking about doing that later on? Or are you going to stay at 90s and just kind of see what you can do and stay there for a little bit?
So I got one more goal as a U90, as a 198. My last goal is to overhead press 400. I'd be the first guy to do it in that weight class in a sub U105. I'd be the first guy to overhead press a 400-pound axle or a 400-pound log. So I think that'd be a really cool thing to set before I kind of move up a weight class. So that's going to kind of be my swan song. as a U90. And I would like to, bulk up to 220, 230 and just see where my strength goes. Because, I know Paul definitely relates this. Over time, you want more, and you want to see what's the next step, and I'm not a guy who likes being complacent. I don't want to sit in the same weight class my entire life. So I'd like to move up and just see what happens,
Yeah, exactly. Nobody's, for the most part, nobody, especially that matriculates to strength athletics, whether it be powerlifting or strongman or combination thereof. You didn't start this to be. No one says, "Hey, I want to get littler and weaker." It's always bigger and stronger. And now, fortunately, we have an environment with strongman's evolved so much in the last 20 years. Like when I did it, there was the heavyweight class, and then I promoted California's first strongest man contest, and we added a 231-pound class, and we had Kevin Nee in it. If you remember Kevin Nee, right?
Oh yeah, I remember Kevin Nee. Oh yeah.
First teenager to compete at World Strongest Man, but he came out at 231, and he chewed Scott Brangle up, who I would train with, and I loved it because Scott Brangle would never shut up. So I loved it because Kevin Nee was super strong. But now it's changed. So you were fortunate enough last weekend to win the inaugural Clash 90. You're world champion. The competition was held in Florida under the auspices of the Clash. It's fantastic. But there was, I think about 10 or 15 years ago, they did have a 231 and under World Strongest Man in addition to the regular World Strongest. But now, how many, there's, as there should be. I mean, the athletes are stronger per square inch, pound for pound you are than, you're talking about double body weight log and axle is now your goal, whereas there's only been one, Zydrunas Savickas is the only one to officially press a 502-pound log, right? So, but he weighed about 420 when he did it, right? So all things considered, look at how strong you are pound for pound. It's amazing. And fortunately for you now, CJ, and athletes in the 90 and then the 105. And I saw the Clash's post this morning, I think, on Instagram that there's like 4 major pro shows or world championships planned over the next year. That's so great. You have so many opportunities. And I didn't even read the female aspect of what different clashes they have. I think they have a Clash female 90 now coming up worlds, right?
They do get they got a Clash to U80 men this next weekend. And then the following week, I think it's August 27th, is Clash to 91 women, which should be a great show. I think especially the way Clash is promoting, they're obviously trying to sell live streams, right? That's their big thing, is they're selling live streams. But the way that they're running the shows, where they're 2-hour shows, they're 1.5 hours to 2 hours, it makes it much more viewer friendly. There's not a huge amount of wait time. I know for us, there wasn't really warm ups. So, we'd get one event done, and then they give us a 2-minute warning the next event was starting. So you just kind of stayed warm throughout the entire show. There was no practicing on the implements. But I know my friends who tuned into the live stream, they really enjoyed it because there wasn't the big breaks. There wasn't the 6-hour shows. It was just boom, 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 done.
Right. And then since you like that more kind of like the staying warm, or do you kind of like the little bit of bigger breaks in between?
I think for me, it was a really big benefit because that's how I train, especially leading to this show. I would train all 6 events in one day. I'd make sure that was done in about 1.5 hours to 2 hours. I would do one set of each of maximal intensity, making sure that I was tired, and then go into the next event, try to make it as quick as possible. And so it definitely benefited me because, some of these guys who I think are stacked stronger, they suffered a little bit just because they weren't used to not having a break. They weren't used to not being able to warm up, where I was just kind of like, okay, we're pressing a 270 log. Let's go up and let's do it. So for me, I think it definitely benefits me.
No, that's awesome. We actually have our first question here from Mambo number 5. What was the hardest event at Clash U90?
Oh, that's easy. They did a yoke, sandbag medley. And it is the worst thing I've ever done in my life. It was, you take the yoke 50 feet, it was a 700-pound yoke 50 feet. Then you run back, grab the 220 sandbag 50 feet, load it. Run 50 feet back, grab the 250, load it. Run 50 feet back, grab the 275, and then go load it over the yoke. It was easily the worst event I've ever done in my life. I've never felt close to puking. There's only 2 guys that finished it. Me and Nick O'Hare. Everyone else, they got the 2 bags over, and then there's like, you know what? Yeah, so me and Nick, we finished it, but man, that was the toughest event I've done. I would compare it to a Conan's wheel or a max distance Husafel. Maybe just a little more painful because obviously the bags go lightest to heaviest. So by the time you grab that 275, your hamstrings, your quads are on fire, and then you have to carry it 50 feet and load over your yoke. So I think that was easily the hardest event I have ever done in a strongman show.
That just sounds brutal. I mean, how would you even prep for that unless you know specifically that's what the event's going to be?
So what I ended up doing was I would do the assault bike as a warm-up.
Okay.
I would do a 20-second sprint and then like a 40-second low-intensity jog, then back into a 20-second sprint until I burned 100 calories. And typically that took about 3.5 minutes, just because those assault bikes kill you. And then I would do the yoke 3 sandbag medley. So I really prepped myself for it cardio-wise.
Okay.
I was like, dude, if you're going to die, like, you're going to die, but you better at least be the most prepared you've ever been. You know, and like, it's one of those things, you know, it's not going to be fun, but you better be prepared.
Right. If we're going to do it, you're going to do it. You're going to go out with your boots on pretty much. Is that what the mentality is? Like, yeah.
Like I might collapse under the 275 bag, but damn it, I'm going to load over that yoke, you know?
It's funny because over the last weekend when we did the Unbroken Strength games, Paul had a similar story. Paul, what was that crazy, kind of like medley you were talking about? Where it was like,
when I got into strongman, what they would do was there was a lot of old powerlifters like me getting into it that had no cardio. So they would give you death medleys. I had to do 750 yoke for 100 feet and then 750 drag back for 100 feet. You had 2 minutes to do it. And it was brutal. The first strongman contest I ever did, not to steal CJ's thunder, but what it was a 300-pound anvil, carry it for as long as you could. So I carried it 246 feet. And then my hamstrings locked up. And then Mark Wechter. Do you know Mark Wechter? You've ever heard of him?
Yeah,
he's like from the Pacific Northwest. I think he might be a lumberjack. He carried that 300-pound anvil like 400 feet. And he only weighed like 220. He just lapped all his big guys. And like when you carry stuff in front of you, like CJ's saying, like there comes a point where your hamstrings just lock and and CJ finished because he's a champion, but some of us just can't move. Your hamstrings stop flexing. It's so brutal.
It's a weird sensation. The first time it happens to you, it's the weirdest feeling. You just kind of feel yourself start to collapse, and you're like, "Oh, I'm going down. Enough is enough. Like my body's done." It's a weird sensation.
Yeah, that's to say the least. So
that's a gnarly event.
Yes. So CJ, we're so excited to talk to you and celebrate your world championship. But in May, you were on ESPN for the first time with Clash, right? Could you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, you know, I was on there trying to break the log world record. Unfortunately, I was not successful. I actually feel like I did everything in prep I could have done. I just wasn't there that day. And sometimes that's how the cookie crumbles. But it was a cool experience. I'm super thankful that I got the opportunity to do that. I'm hoping this year that I get to be there, but competing as a U105 in their actual show. I told Anthony, when I saw him at Clash of 90's, I said, look, dude, I'm going to be there in Jersey to try qualify as a U105 and see if I can qualify for the big show as a U105. Because I'd love to go back. It was a great experience. I got to take my beautiful fiance to Hilton Head, which was a ton of fun. So I'd love to go back and be able to throw my hat in the ring with those big dudes.
How much notice did you get that you were invited to that? Because that's halfway across the country for us. And like, how much time did you have to prep to know that you were going to be at the Clash and on ESPN?
I would say probably about 2 months.
Okay.
So it was a decent lead time. Lead time. And like I said, everything was set for me to be successful. It wasn't there that day. Sometimes that's the way things go. It just made me hungry though, because as soon as I failed, I was like, all right, dude, now when you do Clash in the 90's, you better win. You're not gonna crap the bed twice. So it definitely it relit my fire, to say the least. I was sad for about 5 minutes. I said, what, this will make a great redemption story when you're able to be successful. It'll make a great redemption story.
100%.
I think it's kind of crazy because 4 years ago, we were thinking like, oh, 250 is like a big goal. We're gonna try and all do that. And it's like now, like you're talking 4, Troy's talking 4. It's just like just the commitment and the way you guys have just tackled this thing, and you never stop. You're just looking for the next big thing. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. Like I said, just training, like personally training with you guys is by far. If you guys have never seen this, they're watching the stream or eventually watch this, check out their Instagram pages, please, because it's definitely feats. Like when you actually you set the axle bar record, didn't you, for 315 for your class at the first time? Yeah.
I hit 368 in November last year, and that was the world record. It's still the world record, still lasted.
Yeah.
That being said, I'm not as big of a world record guy as I am like winning, the big shows. I'm more into the big shows now. Just because, like Paul said earlier, Paul kind of alluded to this, no one can take away someone's going to beat my record someday, and that's awesome. There's going to be some freak who comes through, beat the record. I'm going to be super happy for him, because that's an amazing, I know for me, it was an amazing feeling to have a world record. But someone's going to get that same feeling, which I think is amazing. But at the same time, these big shows you win, no one can take away your national championships. No one can take away when you win a big show. That's something no one can take away. And so for me, that's something that's become kind of a bigger focus, is trying to win these bigger shows and to have those memories as I kind of progress on into the strength world,
No, and that's the one thing that I've noticed with this community as well. It's like, hey, you did your thing, it was great, but if somebody beats you, so be it. Because like Paul and I talk all the time when we're on the road trips and just basically hanging around each other. It's like, say if we're going against each other in competition and like I missed a 605 squat. It's like, well, that sucks, but I know you're going for it. So it's like, dude, I want to see 605 move. I want to see 700 move. Like, let's see somebody do it. Like, especially if you're going for it. And that's what everybody just pretty much, gathers around each other and supports each other. It's like, I always tell people, I say, even though they're called competitions, man, they're more or less like meets, because you haven't seen these people in a long time. You know what they're doing, prepare for it, because you're right there living it with them. So it's like when you meet up, you're like, okay, how good are they going to be? Because it's still like that family. If somebody in that family wins, then we all win. Obviously.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's like that saying, like, blowing out someone's candle is not going to make yours burn any brighter, right? So if someone does something awesome, like, hell yeah, clap for them. It doesn't mean that you're not any less successful. It just means that someone, like, be happy for other people when they do awesome things, because I would hope that people, are happy for me when I get to do my thing. And that's just, that's kind of how I was raised. That's how, my mom taught me was, if someone does something awesome and beats you, applaud them, try to improve yourself. But someone beats you on your best day, that's great for them. They got you.
Right. Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's the biggest thing about any kind of competition is that, hey, just you are pretty humble. And I think Paul and I talk like the strongest people and the champions, they're humble, hands down. They don't need to sit there and toot their horn or say this or whatnot. Just, we did our thing. Now we're trying to do something better next time.
Yeah, and like I said, we are a community. The strength world is a community, and no one gets any better by crapping on each other. No one gets any better by talking trash. It's not the way this community works. We have younger guys who kind of come in. I always try to teach them, like, that's not how we roll. Because they'll be like, yeah, well, look at this guy on Instagram. They'll start talking trash. I'm like, all right, that's not really how we do things here. You do your best, and you can't control what other guys do, and try and teach those youngins to be respectful of others.
Yeah, I mean, that's I think that's down your road too, Paul. You've always told me is like, just show up on the platform. You don't need to talk.
And like CJ alluded to, and anybody that's had some success and been a national champion, and now we're graced with a world champion. Like, you do this, and it doesn't build your ego, but what the beauty of it is, it stays with you. Like in my professional life, I've had to take a lot of plane rides across the country, and sometimes you get up in the middle of the night, you're jumping on a plane, and sometimes I would look down and see all the lights and crazy hour flights, and I'm like, man, 3 times I came in 5th over this great country, and I set a couple national records, was a national champion, and CJ can do that now over the world. One of the reasons to do strength athletics is it stays with you long after your victory. It's a personal thing. Then people in the know, the people that are striving for that, your competitors, they know that and they respect it.
Yeah, I mean, like I've been really fortunate, to have a very positive experience of the strength stuff. Have lots of positive role models during it. Obviously, I started as a young man, so I'm just really grateful that I end up in the right hands of people that want me to be successful. I don't think there's a whole lot of negativity in strength sports. I think it's a pretty welcoming community overall. So I just hope for everyone else that joins the sport that they get to have the same journey that I have, and they get to do some cool stuff too.
DJ, got another question here on online. Somebody just asked. It says, when you train to do these sandbag yoke, all these events, do you practice them once a week at full weight or several times at a lighter and full weight?
Okay, so this is a really good question. For me, there's two ways to approach it. The way that I approached it going into this is that I knew that I could do all of the comp weights at the show. When the events were released 16 weeks before the show, I knew I could do all of them without really training them. So since I could already do them, I trained the yoke sandbag. I started out training at 30 feet, where I had the yoke go 30 feet, the 3 sandbags for 30 feet. And then over time, I moved out to 50. So week 1 was like to 30, week 2 was 35, 40, and then by the end of the cycle, I was at the 50 feet through the full run. So if you can handle all the weights for the medley, that's how I would approach it: is increase the distance over time to improve your cardiovascular ability. If you can't do the weights just yet, I would do more individualized practice. So let's say that I'm great at the yoke, but the sandbag taking carry is really hard for me. You might end up doing the yoke and the sandbag separate for the first couple weeks and then start integrating them. So it all comes down to kind of where you're at in your training. If you can already do the weights, though, I would progress the distance over time versus the weights. I'd keep the weights consistent, but change the distances. If you can't do the weights yet, I would do more individualized practice with whichever implement you're struggling on. Hopefully that made sense.
Oh yeah, 100%. If you're a competitor listening to this, young person, that's a rewind and start taking notes, folks, because as a world champion, tell you how to do you put traditional strength training principles into event training. That's a quote unquote, that's a secret right there.
Oh yeah, like Paul, you and I, we both started, obviously powerlifting. So I always approach this more like a powerlifter. When I look at the events, I try to kind of just have that linear progression leading up to the show, where I feel super confident that last week I'm hitting comp weights easy, and then once the show comes around, it's smooth sailing.
In your opinion, CJ, do you think, and Paul, I want to hear your opinion on this too, is that do you think like strength sports kind of like as a whole is pretty much people starting off with powerlifting, and then once they kind of figure that out, then it can branch off into like maybe bodybuilding or maybe into strongman, only because that we're seeing a lot of these athletes like in the bodybuilding field and strongman fields that they all have these backgrounds of powerlifting. I mean, Arnold even said it. He technically classifies himself as a powerlifter, but he's known for bodybuilding. But it's because he built that dense muscle when they go to shred or when they go in the competition. Do you think that affects pretty much going against somebody who just like jumps right into that kind of aspect? If that made any sense.
Well, I think that, and you see this now, fortunately with YouTube, you see the training. So you always you start at the top. If you like some of the world's strongest men recently, you have Eddie Hall has an extensive YouTube library. We did a lot of basics powerlifting in the gym. I mean, sets of almost 6 with 800 in the squat. Obviously, he deadlifted 1100. Thor Bjornsson, the same thing. I mean, the taller an athlete is, the longer it takes themselves to build themselves up, right? There's more they're working with. Current world's strongest man twice, Tom Stoltman, is training online. A lot of basic, strong, heavy training. Of course, powerlifting's got the bench press, which should just be an adjunctive movement for any strongman. I know from transitioning between both sports that you don't need as much bench training. You want to get the shoulder mobility to do a log or an axle, whatever your overhead is when you go into strongman. And bench pressing can kind of, it's disadvantageous to do a lot of heavy benching when you're trying to get your shoulders, quote unquote, loose enough to heavy overhead. But that's my experience. It's certainly bleed over. I mean, probably the greatest strongman of all time historically would be Zydrunas Savickas, who was also an IPF world champion powerlifter. So, but that being said, as we sit here today with the evolution, guys, like our guest today, CJ, the strongest world champion in the under 90, it's strong. Adding strongman training to anything, powerlifting, sports, football, MMA, boxing, bodybuilding, it'll make you a better athlete. The strongest humans in the world today are strongmen, not powerlifters. They're strongmen.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things, just because I've been working, a lot with my brothers who both didn't have the same background that I did. Zach didn't start seriously lifting weights till he is 22. Billy obviously started late as well. For me, I found the powerlifting really helped in learning the basic movement patterns. So, just like learning how to move a bar, while also using my other muscles to support it. So like squatting, like Billy and Zach didn't have that experience of squatting where I did. I think that's where most of the carryover comes from is, just learning how to use your muscles in conjecture of the rest of your body. So I think it is a huge help to have a powerlifting or a bodybuilding background to come into it. But Paul's right. There's also the caveat that you don't want to become too tight in your shoulders. There's a lot of other things you kind of have to consider as well. I think with a lot of powerlifters, they transition over well over time. But yeah, they might have some issues overhead pressing for a little bit just because their shoulders are tighter. But once you get those shoulders loosened up, they usually can pop up some pretty good amounts of weight.
No, I mean, that's great. And I think you do see that. You see a lot of people that they really kind of don't take mobility as a serious thing when it actually is probably the most important thing for any kind of strength sport. You have to be, your body has to move, because if you get to a certain point where you only can go like that, that's not going up anymore. And that's a problem.
Yeah, and that's where you get, the weird muscle tears. That's where you get,
Right.
the shoulder injuries. That's where you get all that stuff. But, just hopefully, if you're transitioning over, you get yourself a coach who can kind of coach you through how to transition over to strongman, and you find somebody who can kind of lead you on the way.
Now, are you offering coaching? Because that's one of the questions I would have. Is there any plugs or any kind of brands you want to say while you're on here? Let them know that.
I do offer coaching. I do offer coaching, and anyone who's interested can privately, message me. I do offer coaching. It's strongman focused. I stick with what I know. I don't branch out to powerlifting or bodybuilding because guess what? I don't know that as well. But I do coach strongman. So if any strongman competitors are interested in coaching, they can always DM me. If they just want advice on something, I'm always someone who's going to give them advice. It's probably going to be a weird 2-minute voice note, but I'm always willing to give advice too.
No, that's great. So if you're watching the stream right now, reach out to him. Would you say Instagram is kind of your main platform that you're going to be able to interact with people until obviously if they hire you and you get their phone numbers or whatnot? Would you say Instagram is the easiest way?
Yeah, Instagram. Yeah, Instagram's great. Instagram usually, and I'll give you my phone number. As long as you don't spam me, Instagram works well.
Yeah. Real quick, I do want to caveat back to kind of what you say. Since you brought up Billy, I'm gonna tell you right now, and I don't want to speak out of turn or anything like that, but watching when he started to what he's accomplished and health wise as well, like I said, he's one of the few people that actually inspires me, or if I feel I'm a shortcomer or something like that, it's like, oh, woe is me, dude. Billy Peirce has overcome a lot of things, and the biggest thing, which I love to tell people, they think like, well, I got diabetes or something like that. It's like, then get in the gym. Don't sit around and worry about it. Get in the gym, because he cleared himself, didn't he?
He did, yeah. So so Billy, he has a really interesting story. I want I really hope that someday when he's comfortable, he shares his story about his weight journey, because I think it'd be really inspirational for a lot of people.
Right.
But he started out very overweight, very health wise. He was in a dangerous position. He learned about it, and instead of staying there and kind of letting himself slowly die, Billy decided to go to the gym and get himself in shape. It's been one of the most impressive things being able to see him get out of his comfort zone. Go to the gym. He's lost 160 pounds over the past 2 years. He's now to the point where he can jog 2 miles, which is absurd considering where he started. So I hope that Billy, I don't want to share too much of the story because I want him to, when he's comfortable, share that story.
Right.
But I think it's super impressive what he's done. Even more so than the things I've done, I'm more proud of him for what he's accomplished, because it's amazing. It's amazing to see,
No, it really is. And like I said, it's his story to tell, and hopefully to get him on here one of these days when he's comfortable with it. But like I said, I know we're talking about you, but it's a Peirce family. It's just a great family, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, getting to know them, they all train together. They're all there together. It's just a really close unit, which I love personally. With you training, and like how you said, you started when you were 10 years old with pretty much the bench press in your room, and that's what you did. What's some advice you would give to those that maybe are interested or a beginner in kind of like the sport and looking to dabble, like for starting from the stuff that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, so I think for me, the biggest thing is, in order to get started, you gotta get started, right? My first strongman show was like my first powerlifting show. I found it on Strongman Corporation's website. The show was in 2 weeks. I emailed the promoter, asked if I could still join. He said, sure. I went there. I had no clue what the hell I was doing. So when I got there, I just asked, the strongest guys, hey, how do I do this? Can you teach me? And of course, like I said, the strongest dudes are the most humble. So they'd walk over, they'd show me how to do the events. I just did the best I could. I jumped right in. I signed up my first year doing strongman. I did 6 shows. My first year, I zeroed a lot of events, but every show I did, I learned a little bit of something. I also made great connections. Guys who were willing to help me out. Easton up in Phoenix. I don't know if you guys know Easton. He's a big time strongman competitor. He's done some cool things. But he especially, he was at my second show where I zeroed a 140 circus dumbbell. And he came over and he gave me advice for about 15, 20 minutes. And then at the end of the show, next thing I know, Easton wanted to add me on Facebook, and he sent me another long 3-paragraph essay about how to not zero the circus dumbbell next time. So you go to these shows though, and you kind of have to set the expectation, hey, today might not be my day. I might zero an event, but guess what? I'm going to learn. I'm going to get to meet some cool people who are going to be able to teach me some cool things. And you take their advice and you put into your training. And every show you get a little better. So for someone who wants to get started, just humble yourself, understand that when you start, you're not going to be the best, and that's okay. You're not going to win every show. You're not going to win every event, but you're always going to learn something. And that's kind of the beauty of this journey, is that there's always something new to learn.
Speaking about learning, CJ, I do got a question, because all of us in anything we do, whether it's cooking, whether it's it's carpentry, or there's any kind of skill, because this is a skill. There's technical aspects about the sport. What are some of the truths you found about the sport, or some of the falsehoods about the sport you thought were real, but then you realize, oh, that's not a thing at all?
Ooh, so some of the falsities about the sport. I guess, one of the falsities that I, first believed was, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think about what I've been told that's been extremely wrong. Let's see. When I first started, everyone told me that I wouldn't be a good U90 or U105 because I wasn't tall enough. So they always told me that I wasn't tall enough because I was a short guy, and that my best weight class would be U80. And so I believe them, but I'm not a small dude naturally. I got I'm decently big boned. I'm not a small dude. So after I went to my my first year of strongman, everyone had told me that I'd be a really good U80 and that I shouldn't bulk up to U90. I said, screw this, I'm going up to U90. You guys can't tell me anything else. I'm going to try and just see how it goes. It ended up being the best decision for me. So anything anyone tells you about height is purely bullshit. Excuse my language. You can do great things at a shorter height. At Clash of the 90's, I was the shortest competitor. Guess what? I still had a great show. The height stuff is totally overrated. You got to learn to train around it. But, if you can push yourself to learn how to do things a little differently, you can make up for any height discrepancy you have.
Yeah.
So that's
Paul, what do you think about that? Because we have conversations, again, where when it comes to sports, everybody's like, oh, I'm going to be 6 foot, do this. I said, dude, when it comes to strength sports, it's somebody that's for me, from seeing people, it's a 5'8", 5'10" height. It's oh, that person's going to probably crush this. It's just because it's that center of gravity. And maybe it's because of the wrestling aspect I used to do when I was in high school. It's those stocky dudes that are just right there. It's oh man, he don't got to bend down. He don't got to move around. It's all boom, explosiveness.
Well, you can't go back and change the genetics you're dealt with, so I'll say that.
Right.
So if you have heart, that's what strength athletics is all about. Of course, genetics help, but I'll tell you, so before the internet really took off and I was in Southern California as a powerlifter, word got out that World's Strongest Man was being contested in Vegas. So we drove over to watch it in Columbus Day. And that was the second time Yoko Ohara won it. And I swear, because I've been with CJ before. I mean, Yoko Ohara is CJ's frame. I think he never got higher than 262 or 258 and won 2 World's Strongest Mans. So we've had Thor and we've had Brian Shaw. We've had some real life giants. And the current World's Strongest Man, Tom Stoltman, 6'9", I think 400 or thereabouts. But, Alexei Novikov is my height, 6'1.5". And I don't think he's 300 when he won his World's Strongest Man a year ago. I know Martins Licis is a 6'3". So it's the old adage, every cliche is true. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog, and that all being said, to be quite honest, for a myriad of factors with food intake and so forth, you see the strongmen that get up to 400 pounds like Shaw and Thor, and they win it, and they only do it a couple times. And I mean, I'm a strength athlete for life, so somebody like CJ can come in, add 5 kilos of good body weight every year by moving up his core lifts and competing in these competitions and putting in the work. And then he can decide, hey, I might go up to the 105s, and I might even go further. And there's opportunities for him to be. Maybe he can be like in the UFC, like a Daniel Cormier, win 2 belts, win the 105 world championship in a year or two. So it's my opinion is it's like anybody that watches, and you and I talk, Sean, about football. It's coming up on football season. It's kind of no different. Like, I don't, there's more training and better advancements and so forth, but every high school is the same. You have about 20 kids that like to run into each other full steam, and out of a class of 300 or 400 kids, it'll always be the same thing. And same thing with high level strength athletics. Cream will rise to the top, and those that put in the work smartly and work the hardest will prevail.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things too. It's like, was it the old adage I always say is that iron sharpens iron, steel sharpens steel. Is that, when you have this, of course you're like, oh, I want to see what this is about. I want to meet this person, or I want to go against them. And that's the best thing about bringing competition.
You gotta be down for the catch weight. You always gotta be down for the catch weight, right? A true champion's down for the catch weight.
Yep. And I love with the CJ is that you brought up Hubert and you brought up Grant, or actually talked about Grant, but it's funny because CJ sometimes do strongman events for people that don't know, and he's like, oh, that weight's too light at that. Let me bump up to like the heavyweights. And you see these guys are heavyweights going, son of a bitch. Like now you got somebody there's going to compete. Like, not saying they're not competing, but it's like, he's going to try and win it. So it's going to be embarrassing if a 90's weight class is going to come up into the heavyweight and then win. It's like, that just shows you, man. It's a threat. I love hearing that. I love seeing that. Like, just the reaction of these big guys are like, damn it.
Yeah, like it's always something that, like, I do because I'm trying to push myself, and it ends up being a tough fun. Like, whenever I get to compete with Grant and Hubert, it's just a great time.
Yeah.
Usually we'll slamming a couple beers during it and just having a hell of a time. So
yeah, absolutely. One of the things, actually, because you said a question I want to ask you about, because I think it is one of the aspects that people don't really talk about, and it's kind of a weird dynamic. And I think it all comes down to pretty much your social life and how you are as a person. But you just, came back from your bachelor party in, where is it? Not, it was Iceland. You just came back from?
It was Iceland.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we'll divulge into that, because as a strongman in Iceland, lifting natural stones and doing what strongmen do in, like, pretty much the home of everything. It was watching your post. All that was fantastic. But for balancing your profession, your professional athletic career, with a significant other or like a family, what are some advices and some things that you would want to tell someone that's trying to get into it, knowing that, hey, here's some of the good things, here's some of the bad things, and this is what you got to do to kind of maintain that equal playing field for that?
Yeah, well, for me, like, I'm really fortunate. My significant other is very supportive. She's amazing. And the things I want to do, we talk about, and then we find a way to get it done. So when I decided to do Clash of 90's this year, I decided that was my big show. Because, obviously we're saving up for, buying a house someday. We're doing all that. So basically I've gotten to the point where, I get one big show a year where I get to travel, I get to do, something cool. And then otherwise I'm competing local, things I can drive to. Because it all comes down to, that life balance. For me, nothing is more important than the relationship I have with, my fiance. That's the most important thing in the world to me. And then my family, and then the strongman stuff. So you gotta find your balance. You gotta find what works for you. For me, I found that doing the one big show a year seems to be what's going to be my bread and butter going forward. And once I have kids, that might change. But it's all just, communicate with your family, communicate with your significant other. Make sure that you have that life balance, because, like Paul said, the strength sport thing, hopefully it's a 40-year journey. Hopefully it's a long journey. You don't need to do it all in 1 year. And you got to be able to find balance with everything.
where do you see yourself going with this? Speaking about your journey, like where is it, like where you are now, obviously being a 90s champion, you talked about maybe bumping up later on once you hit all the wickets and the boxes of the goals you want to have at this class. But what is that like 10 years down the road? You stay healthy,
like,
you stay with it.
10 years down the road, I'm really hopeful that, because in 10 years I'll be 38. I'll probably be in the twilight of my super competitive phase. More than likely, hopefully I'm at high level time 40. But 30, eventually
I'm 38 this year. That's why I said 38. Like, great.
Yeah, well, I know that eventually for me, I started so young that I might not be able to go for as long at high level as some of these dudes who, peak in their 40s. I don't think I'll peak in my 40s. I think I'll probably hit my peak at 32, 33. That's what I really think. So for me, it's just about making all the memories I can during this journey, finding, continuing to make great relationships with the people that I get to meet, being thankful for what the sport's given me and trying to give back. Because until you pay in full what you get from something, you're never going to feel okay. And for me, strongman, especially strongman, has given me so much in my life, so much joy. I hope that in 10 years I've given back to the sport, and that's really what I hope. I'm still trying to figure out how to do that because it's hard to contextualize. I have some ideas, but I really hope that I just get back to something that's given me so much joy.
That's awesome. Really. So like you said, you plan to do it for at least 10 more years. So I mean, that's admirable, because I mean, it does take a toll on you. I mean, Paul, when was you tell everybody the first time you met CJ? Where was that at?
Yeah, I went to my first strongman contest to view at Tucson in December of 20, and I saw CJ tear his bicep, and I was with two college football players I trained. They're back from break on scholarship, and Louis Simmons has a famous quote. I'm like, the fun and games begin after that first surgery. As a strength athlete, you prepare yourself, but sometimes it happens, and the tire flip can be an unwieldy object, odd, and I hate to say I've seen it, because I've seen it many times, but I saw it happen. CJ did it, and it was, to some, that's the beginning of, belly up to the bar and talk about glory days, but like in CJ's case, it lit a fuse. It was the beginning of, with a lot of strongmen, I've never had my bicep detached, but there's not, most of those pros have, and when they get them reattached, they're biomechanically sounder. They're better, because then they usually never hurt it again, and they're stronger. So be that as it may. But yeah, that's been the case with CJ. He used what could have been a very adverse situation to really, for him to assess how to get better. He got better, and now he's begun what I believe will be a strength dynasty at the 90 kilo for as long as he wants that world championships. It's his. And then what'll happen, probably he'll get so strong and thick, he will move up to the 105s, and then it's on,
Yeah, I think, Paul, you brought up, a really good point. And I guess something I just want to share with the viewers is, my mindset after I tore that bicep the first couple of days wasn't great. I even told my fiance, I think I'm done with strongman. It lasted about 2 days. I had about a 2-day period where I was in a pretty dark place mentally. I wanted to, switch over to bodybuilding, switch to something where, just because I felt that I was like, there's no way that I can recover this and that. And then who actually taught some sense to me was Grant, because we went out to dinner. And Grant basically told me, stop being a sad sack of shit. You're going to come back, but you got to get out of this, dude. Like, he's like, I know next weekend I'll see you at the gym and you're going to be doing like one arm circus dumbbell.
Which is what you did.
And sure enough, he was right. After he said that, after he said, everyone needs a friend, right? Everyone needs a friend who's going to call you out when you're doing something. So he called me out. He's like, dude, you are ruining the mood for everyone. You are so depressed. You got to figure it out. And so after he said that, I was like, you know what? He's totally right. I injured one part of my body. There have been so many great athletes who have come back from bicep tears, who have come back from hamstring tears, like all these great recovery stories. Why can't you be a great recovery story? So I had about a 2-day span where I was super depressed. And then it kind of, kicked me, it gave me a nice kick in the butt. Like, hey, why can't you come back better? Why can't you squat? Why can't you do all this stuff? So I started, the week after I started doing, safety squat bars. And I just did that up until I got the cast off.
Yeah.
Safety squat bar. And I'll tell you what, I think it had the most carryover to everything I did, because my squat went up about 60 pounds when I had the sling on. So, I mean, It just, sometimes life hands you, a rough situation. And I guess during that entire situation, I kind of learned like you can come back from things, and yeah, it's going to suck, but guess what? Everyone has something. Everyone who does this sport, everyone who does strength sports, Paul probably has a list of injuries that he's sustained over the years. I've been pretty fortunate so far, but I know that my injury history is not done. So my next injury, whatever it is, I'm gonna have a way more positive attitude. I'm gonna know that I'm gonna come back. So to any athlete who's listening to this, just know that you can get injured and your story coming back is gonna be awesome. But you just gotta keep a positive mindset as you're recovering, listen to the doctor, and then when you come back better.
100%. Like those there's you call it what you will, elite humor or so forth. But when you're in a real strength gym, we have some sayings. One will say, well, if you get an injury, it's kind of like a girlfriend. The only way to get over one injury is get another one if they leave you. And and also there's injuries, and then there's anesthesia and co-payments. So you have to be really, really strong to hurt yourself enough to need anesthesia and a co-payment. So it's, say what you will. I've had 3 surgeries, compliments of lifting. I wouldn't change a thing though. Wouldn't change a thing. I've learned I will help you. DM me on Instagram or through on this platform through Discord. I'll give you some advice. Buy my book for $20. It's got how I came back from numerous pec tears to set a state record in the bench. So like I got some idea, and strength athletes will help, right? You learn so much about yourself on the way, CJ. We've all been there. If you've really Sean too has been serving our country, and the after effects of that. We've all been in some dark places, but you know what? You can choose to fight and get up and dust yourself off and get better. And everybody wants you to succeed.
Yeah, and like none of us want to see anyone else get injured, but we do know that's what happens. And it's really cool though when you see somebody come back and they do awesome things. It's motivation for everyone. Actually, after I tore my bicep and after I got through my recovery process, the first thing I did was I posted an article about how I came back from my bicep tear, just so in case anyone else who tore their bicep could read it and be like, oh, okay, this is possible. Like, this is not the end of the road for me. It's all going to be good.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing is that you kind of said it. A situation you get dealt, you got 2 choices. Either you can sit there and wallow in it and just feel sorry for yourself, or just get back to the grind. And I've always looked at my life for every aspect I've done is that if you're doing something where people are watching you and a group of individuals are kind of taking what you're doing and looking at it, if you can get one person to better themselves out of what you did, then you've accomplished what you need to do. Because it's the fact that I always say is you want to inspire, don't expire. And you don't know what's going on because somebody watching you might be down the dumpster, like you said, in a very dark place, and they say, oh, look at this person. You know what?
Yeah.
They're going at it. I'm still going to go at it. So it just, I tell people, I say, it's like not a lot of us are selfish or anything like that, but it's like, you never know what you're going to impact on somebody. So it's just try to be humble and just be positive.
For sure.
Go ahead, Paul.
When's your next contest, CJ? Not to interrupt you, Sean. So what's next for you, CJ? What will we see you doing?
Well, okay, so obviously I want to do Stack Monsters in Tucson just because I always do it. It's a great time, so I want to do that. Probably do the U105s. I don't feel like cutting weight. But I'll probably I'll do that once or twice a year, but I don't feel like cutting weight, so I'll probably do it as a U105. And then I'm going to do Hope for the Holidays as a U90. I'm going to try to set that 400-pound axle. Be the first guy in the U90 class to press a double, body weight overhead. And then after that, I'm going to do the U105 Clash on the Coast in New Jersey. Go visit my friend Kyle in New Jersey. And hopefully do pretty well there. Hopefully get an invite to Hilton Head to compete with the big boys in the U105s for the championship. And then after that, I'm going to try to win Clash of the 90s again.
So you're going to go up a weight, then go down, or you're going to be at the same weight and compete at the 105s?
Yeah, I'm gonna be the same way and compete in the 105s.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna use what I got. Use what I got.
This coming from the guy that literally like 2 hours before the show. Oh, kind of 1 pound over. I may have done something wrong here. Like I started reading that tweet you did. I'm like, oh my god. So it kind of explained because you showing up to the Clash of the 90s. wasn't exactly smooth sailing from the get-go. Like
Dude,
get into that.
okay, so I had Meet the Teacher on Thursday, from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Then I flew to Phoenix where Grant gave me a ride to the airport for my midnight flight.
Right.
I decided to fly Frontier, so I got 0 hours of sleep. Because you know how Frontier is, right? Like,
Yes.
nothing reclined, plastic seats, it hurts like hell.
Right.
So, of course, I had sleep on the plane. So I got there, I had 0 hours of sleep, I was about a pound over still. So luckily, my buddy Jim, he competes at U90s as well. He's a high-level competitor. He had a sauna in his room. So I posted that. He sent me a message like, "Hey, dude, come to my room. Come hang out in my sauna, and then we'll get you to make weight. I'll just talk to you and hang out with you." So I got there on 0 hours of sleep, super pissed off. I sat in his like 160-degree sauna for an hour, and then made weight. But oh, dude, it was not smooth sailing at all. I got like a full 8 hours of sleep the night before the comp. I was still pretty tired. And then the night after, I probably slept 1 hour. And then I came back. I came down with something, of course, because your body isn't supposed to sleep 10 hours in 3 days. So I came down with something. So it really wasn't smooth sailing. The journey there was really tough. There was an IV lady that was giving IVs. I just remember going up to her after I made weight and going, "Just jab me. Like, I don't care how much this costs. Just please jab me. I need water." So thankfully, nothing bad happened, but damn, that was hard. That was like a hard couple days.
Yeah, but I just remember watching it. It was like you're like panicking, and it's just like the post that came out. You're like, "Oh, made it!" And it's a text. You can't see emotion, but I can just tell the way he was writing. It's just like,
oh. That was brutal. I mean, this is probably the first cut I've ever done so poorly. With Meet the Teacher and all that stuff going on, I didn't plan my cut very well strategically. So then when I get there, I planned to sweat about 2 pounds the night of Meet the Teacher. Didn't have a chance to do that because I have parents come to my room constantly, which is fine. That's what they're supposed to. It's not their fault, right? Like that's their job. My job's to be a great teacher. So no one's fault. But then when I got there, I was just like, "Oh, dude, you still got a pound to go. Are you kidding me? What the hell have you done?" So yeah, that 3-day period was really tough.
well, that's the one thing too, ladies and gentlemen. Like CJ Peirce, yes, he's a 90s champion. So I mean, he's getting ready to go in that realm, like a professional and that. But he still works 9 to 5. He's a teacher, for God's sakes, which is one of the hardest jobs out there, where you're constantly on your feet. You don't got time to eat unless you're like going to basically be like, "Well, I shouldn't do this, but I'm gonna shovel this in front of the kid." You got to make it do. So that's the thing that really is inspiring, is that this isn't like his job of being a strongman. He works to get money to go to these things. It's
Yeah. No, we all have full-time jobs. It's one of the things I love is like I meet these guys and we compete with each other on Saturdays, and then inevitably after the show, we're just sitting there drinking. We're like, "Damn, we gotta go back to work Monday." It's all these guys with different backgrounds, and of course, whenever I tell anyone I'm a teacher, they're like, "You're a teacher?" But yeah, I love kids. I love working with kids.
What is the surprise that they have? Like, could you say that? Like, I mean, we know you, like your personality. You're humble. You're upfront. You're good. You're like good going. I mean, that to us, it's like, oh, that makes sense. But why do people like get that reaction? Like, he's this guy's a teacher. I don't know what is that.
A lot of guys who don't know me, all they see is like the intense screaming and that kind of stuff. And so they're like, "How the hell is this guy allowed to be around kids for 8 hours a day?"
I think because that's what kids need nowadays. Schools isn't that screaming and yelling.
I'll tell you what, it's so funny. No matter what I do, like I told the kids about my Clash on the Coast experience, they thought it was the coolest thing ever. It's so funny because the little kids, like third graders, they think that whatever you do is the most amazing thing in the world. It's so funny to see. Because I'll tell them like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing, Mr. Peirce. You're like Wolverine." I'm like, "Oh, thank you guys. That's so nice."
So now you have your costume for Halloween for the 31st in school now.
Exactly. Yeah, I got the costume already.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, brother. I mean, you got to go anywhere? Are you still good talking? I want to make sure the time is still okay. Or
I got about 10 more minutes.
Okay, Paul. Is there any questions you want to ask him off the cuff? Because that's one of the most impressive things. Like with CJ, it's just that. It's a hell of a story. We've only maybe tickled the surface of what this is, and I did ask some pretty decent questions in my opinion. But
100%. Yeah, Sean, I'm a fledgling training editor at heart. And, so my background somewhat, CJ. So like, I love to hear. I'm a planner like you, like any strength athlete. Like, what's your weekly template for getting stronger? Period. Baseline.
Yeah, so for a 20-week prep, which is like a 20-week, I'll start with an off-season prep. If I'm in the off-season, which is kind of what I'm in now, I'll have my very typical squat, bench, deadlift day, where I squat heavy one day. I do a close. I've never do wide grip bench anymore. All I do is close grip for the triceps, and then I usually do strict press. And then I have another day where obviously I deadlift, and that's deadlift variation. Deliver my coach. I have a deadlift coach who programs all my deadlift stuff for me. So I have my 3 basic days. My biggest goals in the off season is to get my triceps stronger and my strict press stronger. That's always been my biggest focus because I found that's carried over to every single strongman implement. If you have a strong strict press and you can push press later, your push press is going to go up for your strict press. So it's always very humbling for me to go from pressing, upper 3s above my head to all of a sudden 200 being hard. So I do that in the off season. And I have one event day where I kind of combine the other disciplines. So I'll do like a strongman overhead movement, and then maybe yoke, farmers, those kind of things. Just try to improve some of my week. If I'm 20 weeks out from a show, I'll do a 4-day template where I do 2 days of pressing a week because my body handles that pretty well. I have a deadlift specific day and then my event day. And my event day at that point does not include any pressing movements because I'm already pressing 2 times that week. And then that's all focused on what the show demands. Typically, my squat volume gets cut pretty considerably. Just to allow my body to recover from the strongman movements. I cut my squat down pretty big. Still squat, just not the same amount of volume. And then once I'm about 8 weeks from a show, I'll go down to 3 days a week, where it's my deadlift day, it's my press day, and then an event day. So I try to backload everything. So I have that time where I'm just getting stronger, accumulating volume. And then as I lead up to the show, I kind of let up a little bit and let my body recover more and more. Weights get heavier, but the volume goes down. My body feels better.
what is your nutrition like? Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
That's probably very similar to what Paul's done in the past. It's that model of you backload everything, and then as you get closer to the comp, you kind of scale everything back so you're fresh.
Yeah, and not to interrupt Sean, so we're going to talk nutrition, but I you can probably relate to this, CJ and Sean, from your experience. Like when I would start cutting my training back, my body's like, uh-oh, it's coming, and I would start sleeping more. My body would know that I'm going to put it through hell. I'm going to do it or die, and I would start sleeping really good. I mean, recovery is the greatest PED. Sleep is 100%. Sleep is the best PED. Don't get me wrong, and but yeah, what's your experience? When I started cutting back my volume and intensity in the training, that my body would soak that up the last week and just be supercharged.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like that's what's awesome with that backload model that we kind of talk about is you backload everything, and then as you get closer to the top, you cut down volume again, and things get better and better and better.
Yeah, and then I would find, like you, when I traveled, I traveled to the Nationals in Chicago, Virginia, and Pennsylvania, and my sleep was for shit the night before. I couldn't sleep, but I had slept for the past 2 weeks beforehand. It was on, dude. I was ready.
Oh yeah, and especially your cortisol goes up, and you're sitting there, you're like wired the night before the show. You don't sleep.
Yeah. My beauty in me was in my peak in the late 90s. There was no social media, so I couldn't see that my competition had tripled what I could in single. So I didn't have those mental games. I thought everyone there was going to kick my ass, and I better. But all I had control of was me, and it was time to just rest. And the hay was in the barn. It was time to go.
Oh yeah.
CJ, I was going to ask you a question just because, as you talked about your prep and your 4-day, workouts and whatnot. But like for nutrition wise, like what's some of the things that you've learned along the ways that work, or what works for you, or I guess what is it that you eat?
Probably the past 2 years, I've probably eaten healthier than I ever have. My fiance is super into nutrition, so I've probably eaten better than I ever have before. I've eaten more veggies than I ever have in my life.
Oh.
I do pretty much every calorie, especially leading up to a big show. I make sure I get a gram of protein per body weight. Right now, I'm at 3,800 calories a day, give or take, and that's a good maintenance calorie number for me, is about 3,800. I just make sure most of my food's whole. For the most part, I try to avoid having a whole lot of, I guess, for lack of a better term, crap. I try to avoid, copious amounts of ice cream and this and that, just because, no matter what anyone says, body composition matters in the sport, especially in the weight classes. Your body composition definitely plays a role in how you perform. The lower your body fat is, obviously, there's kind of a limit on this, but the lower your body fat is in general, the better it is in the weight classes. So I really try to stay pretty healthy year round.
Now, do you do anything different, like leading up to it, like, where you start doing like the deload, we call it, like that process where we start backing off, but going up to the thing? Like, how's it?
So that last week, it just makes me cringe even thinking about it. But the last week, because I started the week at about 215, cutting down to 198, which for me typically isn't terrible. Usually 18 to 20 pounds is pretty okay for me. But this last time I water loaded. So I did 3 gallons of water on Sunday, 3 gallons of water on Monday, 3 gallons on Tuesday, and then slowly cut my water intake. Dude, I have never slept less in my life. Just because you're peeing the entire night.
Right.
And then nutrition wise, I low carbed everything that week. I think I probably had less than 50 grams of carbs the entire week. And just flushed everything out of my system. Leading up to the show, I didn't eat for a day and a half. And I didn't have water for 30 hours. So it hurts me to think about, and it hurts me, like, it physically, I'm like, oh gosh, like, dude, it hurts me to think about, but that's what I ended up doing. I wouldn't advise anyone to do that. Obviously, that's a pretty major weight cut. If you're not competing at a world level or a national level, I probably wouldn't do it. Anyone who's listening, if you're doing like a local show, please don't cut tons of weight. Keep it under 7% of your body weight. Don't cut like I did, like 9 to 10% of your body weight, because it's a brutal road. It's tough.
So basically, even though you won, the champion at the 90s, but you told us your journey, like trying to get there was brutal. Would you still say that you would more or less tell people, hey, try not to cut you want to put on at the time, but not like put on dramatically, but just kind of stay where you're not trying to like behind the 8 ball, but more or less in front where you can control what's going on?
Yeah, I think especially for amateur local shows, you really shouldn't be cutting weight. If you're just getting to the sport, you really shouldn't be doing any of these crazy water cuts. You should be taking care of yourself. And just learning to enjoy it. Cutting weight isn't something that I started to do until I was at a national level of competition. And then once I got to that level, I was like, okay, now you can start cutting weight. So it's something that I would definitely advise that you do lots of research into and understand the risks. I always have someone watching me while I'm doing one of these weight cuts to make sure that I don't get severely ill, because it is dangerous. No matter what anyone says, it's dangerous. And you kind of have to be ready to suffer.
It's like the old wrestling workouts where you're sitting there wearing a bag in class and it's hot as hell, and teacher's like, what's that noise? And you're like, what noise? I don't hear anything.
Yeah, what are you talking about? Yeah, I'm fine. What are you talking
about? Yeah. So, Paul, you got any more questions for CJ?
I do not. That was very well said. And I appreciate your time today, CJ. CJ's like me. He came in from training. He's got that after training high. And I'm just looking forward to Sean and I get the pleasure of, I'm sure he was going to wrap this up, but Sean and I get the pleasure of seeing you. We're calling Static Monsters. We'll also be there at Hope for the holidays. Can't wait. Last year, if you weren't at Hope, Willie Wessels came out. And I hadn't seen Willie since 1996 when I did a meet in Vegas with him, and he squatted 1,000. So at the Ubu last weekend, I said, hey, Willie, I was there when you squatted 1,000. And Willie, Willie, right? He looked at me and he said, I've squatted that 16 times, Paul. So it was awesome.
That's such a Willie Wessels response. I love it. That's such a Willie Wessels response.
Oh,
my goodness.
Awesome. He loves Arizona. He's going to be here permanently someday. So it's great. And he's super proud of you. We're super proud that, he was telling me how great Clash is and how their relationship with ESPN's fantastic. So the sky's the limit. I mean, I'll probably, Strongman will probably be a weekly show before you know it on ESPN, because it's, some of the programming on there lately could certainly be improved by Strongman. I'll just say that. So I'm looking forward to it. It's great to see. I can't wait to see you in person, champ. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, guys. It was great being on your show. I had a ton of fun. Let me know anytime you guys want to talk. This is always a great time. Hopefully I get to see you before Stack Monsters. Maybe I'll come make a trip to the gym. And get to see you guys and train with you sooner. But thanks for having me on. It was a ton of fun. Always good talking with you guys.
Absolutely, CJ. Can't wait to see your next event. Can't wait to call it, because that's the most fun, getting the hype and getting you guys all ready to rock and roll for when we do these. So, hey, as you hear, we had CJ on here for about, a little bit over an hour. And, we're ready to wrap it up here. So go ahead and reach out to him on Instagram. Go ahead and reach out on any kind of social media. If you want training, he can go ahead and do that. Also get a hold of us if you want to go ahead and maybe get other athletes on here. If you want to throw some sponsors out there, because all here down in Southern Arizona, we're just here to bring the community together to make the sport be alive. And like Paul was saying, here in Arizona especially, you have a lot of champions, a lot of people that are setting records, and sooner or later it's going to take off and it's going to be mainstream. So, hey, it's the end of us here over here at Valor and Venom, and we wish you guys the best. Monday's coming right around the corner. Get out there, grind, kick ass, and we'll see you next week.
We're good, buddy? Oh, good. Oh, great. No, I won't say it. Yeah, no, my phone, I didn't have it plugged in. I see I got about a quarter of the power, so I'm glad. That really, I think, that was excellent. Great time. Yeah, I need a... No problem. I'll definitely need a phone stand next time. I'll get one of those. Well, do they have them at Best Buy? Because Best Buy's next to my work. Yeah,